I'll be on in a second. I'm on the line to get in the call, but they're not going to take my call. It's just a bunch of Destiny fans. One or two other people that called in, but it's basically a bunch of Destiny fans. So I'm going to put this on pause, just my intro, just to make sure I don't get to call in because I don't want to, you know. But so I'll be right back. Oh, now I'm just stuck in limbo. I'm so sorry. I do have to still wait online on the off shot that I do get to call in. So I'm still waiting here. But I don't know. Um, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I'm in a weird spot. I shouldn't have started streaming it. I guess it's my fault. But I assumed they were going to stop. Oh, don't worry. I've been on the call line the whole time. But they're not going to get to me because they took super chats. And I couldn't figure out how to super chat because I didn't realize you can only super chat through Rumble. So anyone that put even $1 super chat in skipped ahead of me in the queue. So I'm not going to get in. And they're only going to take one or two more questions. So I have some questions. Everybody's calling in. One or two people were okay and called it an Ask Questions of Destiny. But everyone else is just, they're just rambling, meandering, saying nothing, rehashing the same thing over and over again, stilted, and like this guy. I hate to be like this, and I understand not everyone's a public speaker, but you call into one of these shows and like you're saying that. Okay. Uh, so, anyways, we're gonna wait and see if they call my number next, and then I apologize. Yeah, Joe, it was an okay debate. I'll critique both sides of it. I will. I wish I was in this debate. I think I would have killed it. Anyways, I hope everyone's having a good night. I'll just in a stalling pattern here until I see who the next calls are or whatever. Because I would really like to call in and wreck Destiny. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So, we'll talk about it, caller. We could maybe. I'm going to focus mostly just on this debate tonight because I've already streamed today. Look how bald I am. Oh my God. Good God. I got a little pickle juice in my hair from the Hankster. Look at this. Look at this area. There's nothing there. There's just nothing. Bobby, I thought you did fine. I did. This sucks. It's a lot of baldness. Yeah, I know. I'm going to get it shaved again here, but it grows back. And I ain't going to the haircut place every day. Yeah, I know, Imaginarium. I didn't meet the criteria for Destiny's debate here, unfortunately. Andrew did okay. I think he left some on the table. I think a couple arguments he made weren't very good. He got to the best argument at the end, which we'll get to, but this is just going to go on and on. This sucks so bad. They're just having the meta argument. Again, while we're waiting for calls, which I won't get on the call, but I have to wait in line in case I do get on the call. So it's just going to be 20 minutes of them saying, why didn't you have a definition, Andrew? And Andrew's going to say, I don't need a definition because I thought your definition would be overly broad, and I was willing to concede that, sure, your definition of insurrection does include January 6th. It also includes pretty much every political protest or riot that's ever occurred in this country. So if your argument is basically you think we could shoot Trump supporters because they're dirty insurrectionists, wouldn't that apply to pretty much any political party? That's why I think your definition is dog shit. I don't have to argue my own definition because my entire point is that your argument is you're trying to demonize Trump supporters to justify violence against them. And it's been evident by the definition that you used, and it could be usurped by, even as Andrew gets him to admit at the end, hippies that are smoking weed to protest weed laws, then that would prove that he's literally just demonizing people. And that's what the entire point of it was. Now, if I would have used any definition of insurrection, you'd have said, that's January 6th means as well. January 6th means as well. It would have proved nothing because you're willing to say that anything, January 6th is an insurrection, no matter what we say, you're going to say that, and you're going to say that's uniquely bad and we uniquely have to judge Donald Trump and judge all of his people, but you won't judge people such as Democrats that have engaged in similar insurrections. That's it. And we're literally on 20 minutes of this, of just this for the last call, just that. Why didn't you have a definition? You have to have a definition. You have to have a definition. You have to have a definition. That's it. And so I'm stuck waiting online for a call to see if I could be able to talk about this. Should I just hang up because there's a 99% chance I'm not going to get on the call? And it's just ruining my video here to have them on in the background while I have to sit here and listen and I can't analyze the entire debate. Andrew should have just went like this. My definition of insurrection is a violent attempt by a group of people to have a good chance effort to overthrow the federal government or to overthrow the government. No, I don't think a bunch of people pissed about the outcomes of an election that went to protest the outcome of that election and then got into a riot and fight qualifies as that. That's what I've said. But instead, he chose to go the route of, I don't have to give a definition, which makes the entire debate, why didn't you give a definition? You don't have to be a Castle Club member to get in on this point, but they're only going to take one or two more calls. They originally said the number was a number that it wasn't it, so it took me a while to get into the call. Once I get in the call, I've been waiting 42 minutes, but the problem is I see a bunch of people on their Rumble Super Chat that have put in Super Chats to cut ahead in the queue, which means that if they're only taking one or two more calls and there's 10 people that put Super Chats in who haven't been called yet, that the chance of my number being picked is going to be very, very low. And they said they were taking one or two more calls 12 or 15 minutes ago. And now it's just been, instead of taking calls, Destiny saying, you didn't have a definition. And Andrew reiterating, but I told you why I didn't have a definition. I'm not a member of their club, so... sucks. Yeah, Andrew was going to use this style, but I think that he could have. I'd have just been like, I don't know, definition. I would have Googled, right? What's the first thing I type in if I go into Brave? First definition given. Arising against civil or political authority or established government, open and active opposition to execution of laws, city or state. Now, again, everything meets that definition. I would have just said this. When the federal government charges people with insurrection, we'll call it an insurrection. Anyways, we're waiting. So we're on minute 25 of them now arguing during the call-ins why he doesn't have... Oh. All right. I'm going to try my best to focus while I'm listening on this in the background to hear if they say my number. But I am a weird person that can't do those sort of two things at once. So we'll bear with me. I know that this sucks. My picture's crooked. Which one? My Akbar? Yeah, I did have an accident here. Something fell. Thank you, wife. I'm not going to get on. They're going to go. The debate ended an hour ago, and they're just going to keep debating and not taking calls, which is fine, which is their right. It doesn't look that straight now. Yeah, the dude's looking all right, right? Well, it's still crooked. There's nothing I could do. So I hope everyone had a good night. I'm stalling here a minute. Then we'll talk specifically about this. Askew. Yeah, who said askew? Did I say that? Jesus. That's a good word. Check out my video I did earlier today with John Ward and his crew. I thought it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. So like that. I was looking forward to this debate tonight. Got to see all of it and was pleased with that. It was something I was looking forward to. I'll start off by saying I thought Andrew did great. I thought he did pretty good. I think I would have absolutely crushed this debate. I thought it wouldn't have been reasonably close unless somehow Destiny would have done much better against me. I am shocked. I am absolutely shocked at the amount of time that Destiny is seemingly prepared for this. And basically, this was the best he had. I think there are arguments that Andrew left on the table, and I think there were some points that Destiny made well. But I'm shocked that this is as good as he had. It just was not that impressive. It wasn't. And we'll talk specifically. There's all sorts of things. I won't bury the lead. The debate is lost by Destiny at the very end of the debate. And it takes Andrew a long time to get there. And I'm sitting here watching at home, and Courtney's watching me watch. And I'm basically saying the entire time the strategy is Destiny's definition is so broad that literally any protest against any federal issue, and it's probably any issue, but he's trying to delineate federal, any single one would constitute an insurrection. And so finally, Andrew gets around to like, okay, a bunch of hippies smoking marijuana. They're protesting marijuana laws. They go, all with the collective purpose to protest these laws. A few of them get rowdy. Now that's an insurrection? And Destiny's like, yes. That's it. That's the end of the debate. That's the end of it. That's the end of the debate. Your definite... When Destiny goes on Piers Morgan and he's saying everyone that supports Trump supports an insurrectionist and blah, 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 and it's evil. And so you're effing around and finding out if you get harmed, if you get shot. That's Destiny's point. That's why we're having this debate. Because of these comments. And Destiny's admitting, I would feel the same way about pot smokers that were protesting pot laws. Here we're still going. Yeah, 10 goat. There was so much Andrew left on the table. And I think Andrew's right that based on the definition that's being given by Destiny, I don't see anywhere where a distinction of is it needs to be federal to be an insurrection. I don't believe that's the case. And basically in Collins, there's a little of that that's gotten to. And that's when they talk about the Chaz zone, right? And what's gotten to there is like, if I insurrect against the state government of Washington and say, I've taken this property for my own, isn't that also an insurrection against the United States? If I help, like they use the term treason, if I help the British overthrow Iowa, isn't Iowa part of the United States? Wouldn't that be treason against the United States? Or would you say, oh no, that's not treason against the United States. That's only treason against Iowa. It's stupid. Like, so that, like, yes, that's a point, but you could get out of this whole debate by just being like, okay, every attack on an ICE facility, federal insurrection. The attacks on May 30, 2020, when they're burning down federal buildings, insurrection against feds. They're attacking Secret Service, insurrection against federal. Any attacks that occurred in Black Lives Matter that there was any federal property, Secret Service, National Guard, that's an insurrection against the feds. Period. Easy. Okay, all of those are insurrections. And now? Kind of sucks. I feel like this was a mistake because I'm not sure what they're talking about now, but I'm sure that I thought Andrew had ended on a high point, and now it's going to I thought that perception it looked terrible for Destiny. Andrew was correct to be like, cool, I'm willing to end the debate on your point that pot-smoking hippies protesting marijuana laws are committing insurrections. Willing to end on that. It's sad for Andrew to get drug into this in the callers. And it's unfortunate that the callers were almost all skewed against Andrew, that he got drug into this and allowed Destiny to sort of take it into this 50-minute spiel about you didn't have a definition. If I was Andrew, I'd just say, yeah, I didn't have to, it's fine, go. And Destiny could have said, blah, 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 blah. I'd be like, your definition's too broad, you're clearly using it to demonize people. That's it. That's what Andrew should have said. He could have been out of here 30 minutes ago. Maybe you could have got me in the call to really... Okay, it wasn't me. Last caller wasn't me. Okay, we could end that. So, unfortunate I didn't get to call in, but yeah, so in general, I thought the opening statements were as follows. I would have, if I was Andrew, I would have said, okay, my opening statement would have been this. I've heard Destiny talk about this a lot. I haven't heard him define insurrection yet. He keeps saying this is, so I'll wait and see how he defines insurrection. Other than that, I thought that his opening statement was spot on. Yes, the topic of the debate is what is an insurrection, right? But imagine this. What if Destiny had said, anyone who engages in, I don't know, violence deserves to be, and they get shot, they deserve it. Anyone. And he's saying all this vile, heinous shit. Anyone who's ever engaged in violence. And then he has a discussion, which is, have Trump supporters engaged in violence? And you go and you're like, okay, let's have the debate. And he says, my definition of violence is anything that's required out of anger, any physical touching in history that a person's done. And you'd be like, but that's so broad. Like you've said that Trump supporters deserve to be shot, or you don't feel bad if they're shot because of actions that literally everyone's taken. It doesn't matter if he's right? What matters is you've overbroadened the definition. And this is the same debate I had with Pisco on the Crucible months ago. And it was a mistake that I thought that Andrew made as the moderator. At the end of the show during audience questions, he got in a 40-minute discussion with Pisco about the definition of insurrection. I didn't need to have that debate. I said, Pisco, what's your definition? He gave me a definition. I said, cool. Wouldn't that definition also apply to Black Lives Matter and a bunch of other things? He goes, yeah, I guess so in some senses. Okay, that's why the definition is meaningless. If it encompasses political movements all across the spectrum and you're only focused on one, then we have to ask why that is. That's the whole point. So if you're saying engaging in an insurrection means that you shouldn't be allowed on a ballot, but you're admitting that Democrats supported Black Lives Matter that engaged in insurrections. Kamala Harris, for example, now the other candidate for president, actually supported a bail fund for people that engaged in violence, which would be an insurrection. Why should we support her? Why should she be allowed to be on the ballot? That's the issue. You could define, right? You could say it's I think anyone who's ever engaged in treason should be kept off a ballot. And you say, how do you define treason? And you say, anyone who's acted against the interest of the Constitution of the government or paid taxes, therefore, to organizations that did that. And I'd say, well, do you think the U.S. government in the last 50 years has operated against the Constitution? Yep. So anyone who paid taxes to that engaged in insurrection as well? Yep. Okay, that's pretty much everyone in the country. Yep. Okay, then what's the point of this discussion? Okay, great. So you think if you say that people that engaged in treason are effing around and finding out, and if they get shot, they had it coming, wouldn't that mean everyone? Yep. Okay, this is stupid. That's the whole debate. That's the debate. Destiny's argument about Black Lives Matter makes no sense. So when he's pushed on this, he says Black Lives Matter. First, he tries to differentiate. He's trying to differentiate in two ways. So that's, let me get back to the debate, right? So, and then the opening statement, basically Andrew pulls out a bunch of clips. One of them was with a debate from me. First clip he pulls out is Destiny admitting that what he saw immediately after January 6th was clearly not an insurrection or attempt to overthrow the government. That should have been focused on more in this debate. I think that's a mistake Andrew made. Andrew completely forgets about his opening statement after it. And it was a great opening statement because it's not necessarily germane to the semantics of was January 6th an insurrection. It's germane to that first part is that clearly Destiny didn't think so upon viewing it. And only after he changed his mind when he realized the political expediency. Then the other two clips was Destiny admitting that he thinks that rioting and violence against public institutions are the other side of the coin of voting. That means Destiny has literally gone on record saying he supports insurrections because what he's saying, that was in context, that was with a debate with me where he made that claim. And what he said was, we were talking about the George Floyd riots and I was condemning them and saying they were bad. And he said he didn't support rioting against private property. But hey, it's based. We're America. And if they felt their voices weren't being heard, well, that's the other side of the coin of voting, of rioting. And he said that was okay. No, he didn't say this part. That was young and uninformed. Yeah, I agree, Lactoid. I agree. So Destiny's basically admitted, I support insurrections. Now, why is this important? Because Destiny's entire point is it's so unethical to support Trump. Why? Because he supported an insurrection. And therefore, you're a traitorous scumbag, and if you get shot, you have it coming. That's his argument. And yet Destiny's admitting, of course, I support insurrections as well. I think insurrections are completely legitimate if you feel that the cause that you're fighting for isn't being heard. That's his argument. Jericho says, Destiny gave a historical definition based on the Constitution. No, he didn't. He gave a definition based on some guy's interpretation. Why didn't he give the definitions that were used in the Colorado court? Why didn't he give definitions that we see that there's actually laws against insurrection and rebellion, that he could have used the actual law codes? He gave an argument from some paper he read that was going to, I'm guessing this paper was written after January 6th, and it was someone saying, clearly January 6th was an insurrection, and here's how I define insurrection. He says he gave a distinction between riots and insurrection. His distinctions were meritless. And the problem is he broadened his definition so much that it includes people smoking pot. Let me ask you this. I'll just ask all of you. Hey, what's up, Joey? Let me ask all of you. Do you think that a bunch of hippies protesting marijuana laws, if a couple of them get rowdy and the police have to arrest them, do you think they deserve to be shot? Answer 1, yes, if you think they deserve to be shot. Answer 2, no, if you think they don't. I'm particularly interested in Jericho's answer, who thinks Destiny won the debate. So we'll see if Jericho answers. The question you have to ask yourself is, why are they so enthralled with using the term insurrection? Why? Well, because they need to be able to say, as Andrew correctly points out, that they could use all sorts of heinous tactics against the people that committed the insurrection. Whether it be kicking, it's not reframing. How's that reframing? That's not reframing whatsoever. That's literally Destiny's argument. Am I correct? Destiny's argument is if you commit insurrection or support insurrectionists, then you deserve to be shot. That's his argument. He also says pot-smoking hippies against marijuana laws, if they come together to protest them and a couple of them get in a fight, that was an insurrection. Yes or no? That's what he said. That's it. That's the whole discussion. That is good. Am I being bad faith? Can someone tell me where I'm wrong in there? Do I need to play the clips again from Piers Morgan? Do I need to play the clips? Does anyone deny that Destiny said that anyone who's at a Trump rally is fucking around and finding out? And if they get shot, so be it, because they're traitorous and they're supporting insurrectionists. That's what he said. Do you disagree, Jericho? Is that being good faith? Go ahead, Jericho. Tell me where I'm wrong. Is that what Destiny said? Now, in the context of Destiny saying that, he challenges right-wingers to a debate. I'll challenge anyone that January 6th was an insurrection, as long as they have 100,000 followers, which I don't. Andrew Wilson says, fine, I'll take that debate. Okay, was January 6th an insurrection? Andrew Wilson's argument's like, I think that you're going to say something that's so broad that it encompasses a bunch of other shit. In fact, Andrew says, hell, I'll even concede that January 6th was an insurrection, as long as you also concede that the Democrats engaged in insurrections quite frequently as well. So if there's insurrections happening all over the place, fine, I'll concede that January 6th, based on that definition, was an insurrection. Do all of them deserve to be shot as well? Jericho says, I'm not talking about Destiny's tweets. I'm talking about the January 6th debate in particular. And this is how you can see, Jericho asked me to be good faith. This is how you can tell that Jericho and people like him are bad faith sacks of shit, right? That's it. All men should be shot. You're like, no, I think that's a terrible idea. Now I'm saying, well, can you define man? Yeah. Oh, so you just define men, or all violent men should be shot. He defines men itself as violent. You're like, so that means every man should be shot. Yeah. Destiny's tweets were terrible. It has nothing to do with Destiny's tweets just being terrible. It is, what do we declare an insurrection? That's the problem. That's what we're talking about. Have I seen Alan Dershowitz' opinion on this? No, not particularly. Destiny's definition of insurrection is so broad that it includes pot-smoking hippies. Okay, Jericho, now what? Now what? Now what do we do with that information? Okay, Destiny wins the debate. He won the debate. Insurrection is any political protest. There, he wins the debate. Now what? Okay, now what? He won. He won the debate. He won. January 6th an insurrection because everything's an insurrection. And January 6th was part of everything. Therefore, he wins. Now what? Go ahead, Jericho. Now, what do we do with that information? And what do we do to insurrectionists, Jericho? Go ahead. What do we do? Do we shoot them? Do we kick them off ballots? Do we throw them in prison? What do we do with insurrectionists? Go ahead, Jericho. What's everything's an insurrection, and now what do we do with everyone? Go ahead. Pot-smoking hippies. What do we do with them? They deserve to be shot? Woodstock, insurrection. Black Lives Matter, insurrection. Protests against ICE facility, insurrection. Protests out Kavanaugh's house, insurrection. All insurrections. And now what? Now what do we do with them? That's why, right out of the gate in his opening statement, Andrew Wilson says, that's fine. If you want to broaden the definition of insurrection to include things that would include Black Lives Matter protest on ICE facility, he doesn't say this, but many other Democrats. Anonymous Coward says, for $5, thank you so much, says, Destiny lost the debate even on rhetoric. Where was this tough guy energy he had last week? He didn't even attempt. It's true. You could agree with this point of view, but it doesn't mean he won the debate. Andrew preempts this. He says initially, because Andrew's entire spiel, just like when I debated Pisco, I don't need to sit here. You want to know what insurrection means to me? I told people, this is what it means to me. Group of people coming together with violence, trying to physically overthrow the government and take over the government of the United States. It's clear that's not what January 6th was. That's it. No, my definition is this. Okay, then let's accept your definition. That would include a bunch of shit in Black Lives Matter and Democrats, right? Right. And the reason we're having this debate is you think that those people should be shot, should be kept off a ballot, etc., right? Right. Okay, well, if it includes all these Democrats, if it includes the Democrat candidate and the Republican candidate, why are you only focused on taking out one of those groups of people? That's the whole point. That's why Andrew says right out of the gate correctly, fine, I'll concede this debate. He had no problem with it. He said he would. I even talked to Andrew before the debate, and he told me, he said, I'll say right now, yeah, you're right. Destiny won this debate. January 6th was an insurrection. And he's also agreed that he supports Kamala Harris and the Democrats, which also engaged in insurrection. And he supports them. Sure, great. But you won the debate. January 6th is an insurrection. Great. You did it. So I am being good faith. That's entirely what the debate was. That's it. No one gives a shit about the semantics. Well, technically, if he wins he read a definition and said it meant that, he wins the debate. The other thing was, and it was never brought up again, unfortunately, was when Andrew Wilson played that clip of him, Pisco, asking him. And I'll play the clip again. Well, I won't now, but where Pisco asked him, did you want that bullet to take out Trump? And he's basically like, oh, I don't want a Fed post. Destiny then reads, it wasn't even a definition, really. He said, here are the things that need to be met to be a... So I guess we'll call it a definition. But it's just from some random guy. That's right, all drinky poo. That's exactly right. He says Destiny won. Even if Destiny won the debate, he would have lost big time if he admitted that every one of the Dems and Repubs have taken part in insurrections recently. Exactly. And that's what's going on. Here's the truth. Every one of us watched January 6th. Destiny in 2021 watched January 6th. And we all said, that's bad. There's a riot there. There's violence. Clearly, this wasn't an attempt to overthrow the government. Clearly, this wasn't an insurrection. They didn't really bring weapons. They way outnumbered police, broke past police. They didn't really do anything violent once they were in the Capitol. Clearly, this wasn't an attempt to overthrow the government. The Chewbacca guy, the QAnon shaman, that was like, oh yeah, man, we're in the chambers. They didn't do shit. All of us saw it. Then what happened was the Democrats were like, oh, we could try to use this to go after Trump and his supporters. So that's what they've done for 3 years. Oh, it was an insurrection. Now it was an insurrection. It was an insurrection, and Trump's engaged in it. And now we need to keep him off the ballot. And now we need to arrest all these people and blah, 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 and act like it's the biggest attack on our country since 9/11. Okay, how do you define insurrection? Well, an insurrection is any attempt at violence or intimidation to impede a government process. Oh, you mean like people blocking a road? Well, I don't know. You mean like Black Lives Matter over and over? Well, that's weird. Now, for someone like me who constantly argues that the problem is the two-tier enforcement of justice, that's the entire debate. Okay, if you want to say January 6 people committed an insurrection, and all of them deserve to face the penalties of insurrection, and Trump deserves to face the penalties for insurrection, then how about the Democrats that supported Black Lives Matter? Thank you, Jericho. Don't say I'm not being good faith next time and I won't be as hostile to you. I'm clearly being good faith. So Destiny reads this definition, and Andrew, I think, correctly spends the first 3 minutes talking about the definition. But where Andrew makes a mistake is not going back to his opening. Particularly as I didn't like the way particularly they did 3 rounds of uninterrupted talking at 3 minutes apiece. I thought that was a little weird. The debate became much more fluid once they were both able to talk. But in fairness, Destiny was getting pretty much beat up in the 3 minutes where they couldn't respond to the other. I think he did better once they could respond back and forth, if I'm being totally honest. But let's see who's chirping me. But basically what's the back and forth going on is they're just talking about sort of point number 2. Like, I forget what the 4 points were. It's like, it's got to be a gathering of people. Okay. It's got to be to resist a law or something or interfere with government business. It's got to have an aspect of like violence or intimidation, and it's got to be public. Destiny admits 1, 3, and 4 are all met by pretty much every protest or riot. So then, okay, then we get to part 2, to resist a law. And there's some quibbling here. There's basically 2 arguments that Destiny makes to differentiate. One, he says it has to be federal. But I think that... why? It might have to be a federal to be an insurrection against the federal government. And you might say, well, therefore the law to keep him off the ballot only applies to the federal government. Okay, nonetheless, but it's still an insurrection. And Destiny's claim seems to be a moral claim, not a legal claim. So when Destiny's saying basically Trump's supporters are supporting violent, treasonous insurrectionists, that's a moral claim, not a legal claim. So why would it matter if it's an insurrection against federal or state government? Second, it seems to be a distinction that doesn't matter anyways. And then the other claim he makes is sort of, well, there's a difference between resisting laws as it's occurring versus your entire point's to be there to resist a law or government process. I'm not so sure his definition makes that point clear. She, for $10, thank you so much, says, Destiny also claimed that insurrections can't happen to state governments when U.S. Code 251 states that the federal government can offer to help states facing insurrection. Well, there you go. Excellent point. Thank you for the $10. So, and the point is, like, if you say, I forget what the exact was, but interfering with, like, government agents doing their job or whatever, like, yeah, once you're at a riot and they say, there's been a curfew, go home, this is now unlawful, you're interfering with the enforcement of law. His definition didn't say that the reason you're there is to protest the law itself. Also, another reason that Destiny's definition is stupid, I guess he would argue that second part would entail this, but isn't an insurrection if I seek to violently overthrow the president? Because that's not a law or a government process, right? Or would you say no, because the president is an agent of the government, the overthrow of him is in itself interfering? Because if that's the case, then wouldn't the same be true of a federal officer? Also an agent of the government. So if I'm trying to physically harm them, am I not interfering with the lawful process and execution of law? So it's just not a good argument. It's not. Now, one argument I have to take Andrew to task on, he kept making this argument, and I just think he is 100% completely wrong. Andrew makes the good point, if this was an insurrection, why was no one charged with insurrection? And Destiny makes the point, just because they weren't charged doesn't mean they didn't commit, which is technically true. Now, there's better answers to this, but Andrew says, yeah, but just because they weren't charged doesn't mean they did do insurrection. That's a nonsensical argument. That is, and Destiny calls that out. That is absolutely nonsensical. Andrew's making an offensive argument, and that argument is, okay, this wasn't an insurrection because, and he lists some things. One of the things he lists is because no one was charged with insurrection. So that's the reason. Think of it this way. Destiny says it's an insurrection. Andrew says no, because no one was charged. Now Destiny has to play defense against that argument. And his defense is going to be, well, sometimes you could commit crimes and you're not charged for them. And that's defense against the offensive claim. The reason I know this wasn't an insurrection was because no one was charged. And Andrew's answer is, but just because they weren't charged doesn't mean they did commit an insurrection. Right. Okay. Thanks, Barbecue. You appreciate it. Does everyone get what I'm saying here? Does everyone understand the argument? It's confusing. It's not an attempt to trap Destiny. He's confused on the point. I don't even know how to make an analogy. It's simple. It's a simple point. And Destiny makes the point. He's like, yeah. Right. I'm not saying, oh, they weren't charged with insurrections. That meant they did commit insurrection. That's not Destiny's argument. Andrew is basically making Destiny's argument for him. Because when Andrew says, well, if they committed insurrection, why weren't they charged? And Destiny says, well, not just because they weren't charged doesn't mean that they didn't commit it. And Andrew says, but that doesn't mean they did commit it. In other words, what Andrew's literally saying there is the charging or uncharging of a person is completely irrelevant. It proves nothing. It proves not that, like, Andrew's basically conceding the point. Whether or not a person was charged literally has nothing to do with whether or not they committed insurrection. They could have not committed insurrection and been charged. They could have not committed insurrection and not been charged. They could have committed insurrection and not been charged. And they could have committed insurrection and been charged. So it's irrelevant. The charging of insurrection is that's a terrible argument, and Andrew spent a lot of time on it. I just didn't get it. I didn't get that point. And particularly when Andrew could have been going back to his opening statement. That's where he should have been going. He had all the arguments there, and Andrew did good, don't get me wrong. And when you're in the moment of a debate, it's difficult, it's easy to judge afterwards. I'm not just saying. Andrew recovered that point by stating Destiny's appeal to authority to the law is exactly what Andrew was using to demonstrate January 6th was an insurrection. He did make other arguments to that effect, but that specific point of saying, well, just because they weren't charged doesn't mean they did commit insurrection. No. He was not in that point. He does later try to make the point that, and Andrew could have made this point much better. When he starts to talk about the historical examples of insurrection, right, those were all historical examples that were relied on by charges that were filed by courts. None of those exist here. There was the Colorado case that was overturned. That's it. So when he says, well, in 1850, the Whiskey Rebellion was an insurrection, those were all things that relied on sort of actual court definitions of insurrection. So where are they this time? And that's a solid point. And Destiny, to that one of the last callers there, it actually screws the pooch royally when talking about the Chaz zone and stuff, and he says, then how come no one was charged with insurrection? Destiny literally makes the exact point, and I wish Andrew right then was like, exactly, Destiny, right. As soon as when pressured, like, well, what about the attacks on the White House on May 30th? What about that? What about attacks like in the Chaz zone? And Destiny goes, well, I'm unaware of anyone that got charged with insurrection there. Right! Exactly. Then Destiny makes a mistake in the callers later where he says, I don't know, if one or two people were saying that in the Chaz zone, does that make it an insurrection? That's your argument, Destiny. That's your argument. Your argument is, as long as it was a couple of people that were there to insurrect, the whole thing is an insurrection. That's his argument. So anyways, that's where the debate was. Yeah, he said they didn't have to be unarmed, or to be armed. Yep. That's exactly the point, MW. That's the debate. That's why I was kind of giving this Jericho guy the business earlier. I don't give a shit. Right? Take any term. Take like a term that we know has sort of a fluid definition. For example, let's take the term immoral. Right? Now we all have an idea. Oh, thank you. John Ward's the man. Thank you, Us. I appreciate it. Let's take the word immoral. Okay? Now, we all have a general idea of what the word immoral is, just like we have a general idea of what the word insurrection is. But on the specifics, we might disagree. In other words, what you think is immoral and how you would exactly define it might be different than how I define it, even though we have a general idea of what we're talking about when we say that term. Now, let's say that I was to say, I think that immoral people should not be allowed to run for office. And I think anyone who supports an immoral person, if they end up getting shot, well, they were effing around and found out. You might be like, okay, how do you define immoral? Because if you define immoral as, well, I'm only talking about immoral as people that commit sex crimes against children, then maybe you would say, oh, maybe. But if you define immoral as anyone who's ever told a lie, anyone who's ever been mean-spirited, anyone who's ever shouted at someone out of anger, that's all immoral. And then you said, Well, were the actions of January 6th immoral? And he says, yeah, there were several people there yelling and pushing police. That's immoral. Therefore, and you would say, right, but your definition of immorality includes basically everyone, and what your prescription is for those people is incredibly harsh. If they get shot, they have it coming. They shouldn't be allowed to run for office. They're all traitors. You see the problem? And you might say, well, where was your claims of this when we saw Democrats being immoral? Where were they? Why are you only speaking up now? That's the problem with how Destiny defines insurrection. If it's broad enough that a bunch of left-wing things that we've seen in the past 6 years also qualify, then where was Destiny's outrage? Where was his anger? Where were the Democrats' anger? Where was it? Where was the attempts to keep them off ballots? Where was it? And ultimately, although this could have been clear, and I understand in debates it gets muddled, Andrew comes to the correct argument at the very end of the debate proper. So wait a minute. You're saying a federal law, because he keeps hinging on this idea of federal law. By the way, again, I don't mind. I think Andrew's making good arguments. Your definition doesn't qualify federal. But there's so many instances of federal. Every attack on an ICE facility, which there were many. There are attacks on ICE facilities. AOC calls ICE facilities concentration camps and Nazis. So she should be off the ballot, correct? Anyone who supports AOC, supporting traitors, correct? That's federal. May 30th, 2020, they attack barricades going to the White House, burn down federal buildings. That's federal. Those are Democrats. Joe Biden made fun of Trump for having to be moved to a bunker. Where was Destiny's outrage? Where was it? I've brought this up to him for at least 3 years. He knows of May 30th. He knows all about it. Where's his anger? Where's his outrage? Why isn't he demanding FBI investigations to see who organized it? None of it. Thanks, Arcar. I appreciate it. I think I always do well against Destiny. Just today, right? Yesterday, people, wasn't it Union Square in D.C.? Federal property, burning down a federal flag, attacking federal officers. Insurrection, right? Because they're upset about the federal policy of supporting Israel. That's an insurrection, correct? Where are the massive investigations? I did, Cicely. I don't think it helps them. I talked about that earlier. That's the whole debate. The whole debate is you shot your mouth out and said the most heinous shit about people that support Trump, even after an assassination attempt where one of them was killed and 2 others wounded. And you shut your mouth out because you made it seem like this is such a uniquely terrible thing. They are insurrectionists. And yet you kept your fucking mouth shut when you saw Democrats supporting the same thing. That's the whole debate. Destiny wants to say, this is what they want to do. But technically, would you call this an insurrection? Technically, would you say it's an insurrection? Technically, based on this definition, would you say based on my definition it's an insurrection? If you're like, sure, but the term's meaningless. Just like the term immoral. If you say all of these things are insurrections, but you're only recommending harsh penalties against one group of them, it makes it meaningless. You've broadened the term to meaninglessness. The best example I could give of what happens when you broaden a term too much to the point of not meaning is, what is a woman? If a woman is anyone who calls themselves a woman, and I say, hey guys, let me tell you a story. So the other day, I was going into the bar, and this woman comes walking out. Now, as I'm telling you that story, you have an idea of what some of these words mean. Like bar, you get an idea in your head, right? Woman. You get an idea in your head. But if a woman is literally anything that claims they're a woman, the word becomes meaningless. Why define the entire reason we have language and labels is because those labels limit to what that definition is so that it has utility. Here's a better example. Let's say tall. What does tall mean? We might disagree. You might say, I think tall is anything over 6 feet. Someone might say, no, I think it's over 6'4" is tall. Whatever. But we have an idea. It means someone of big height. That's tall. And if I say, Some guy stole my wallet, officer. It was a tall man. And he says, how do you define tall? And I say, to me, tall is anyone who calls themselves tall. Now, who's the officer looking for? Oh, Crucible Raid. Thank you so much. Look at that, 576 beautiful people. Good, we'll start over this review. Yeah, my shitty audience. Now we're just talking about the Crucible's audience. To hell with you people. No, I'm just kidding. That's why the words matter. Reviewing the debate. Let's start at the top, now that the Crucible audience is in here. I thought Andrew wins convincingly. And I'm saying that as objectively as possible. And I think the convincing win literally comes at the end of the debate proper. And that's when Destiny is forced to admit that, yes, a bunch of hippies protesting marijuana laws, if they show up and start protesting them, and then a couple of them get rowdy and engage in violence, that means the entire thing was an insurrection. What that proves is Andrew's initial point, which I'll admit he did beautifully at the beginning in the opening statement. I don't know how much Andrew allows me to talk about this shit, but I did talk to Andrew a little bit about a couple things that I would say in this debate before the debate, right? And he came up with this point, which I thought was wonderful. He's like, dude, Rob, I'm going to tell him right out of the gate in my opening, I will concede the debate. I'll say, you're right, January 6th was an insurrection. If he wants to use a definition that's so broad that he'll also admit that the Democrats have engaged in insurrections with things like Black Lives Matter. In other words, okay, both parties are insurrectionists. Both candidates have supported insurrections. Okay, sure. I'll concede you win this debate then, if that's what you want to say. Because the point isn't to semantically win whether or not January 6th was an insurrection. The point is they're having this debate in a broader conversation. And that broader conversation is comments that Destiny and other Democrats have made. Destiny in particular going on places like Piers Morgan and basically saying that Trump supporters deserve to be shot because they're treasonous a-holes that support an insurrectionist. Look at this raid. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. That's it. And Andrew is right. That's the debate. The debate's not trying to semantically win whether or not this was an insurrection. I had a debate on the Crucible against Pisco, same thing. What's your definition of the term insurrection, Rob? I was like, just off the top of my head, this is what I come up with. A group of non-state actors, because I don't think, it's not like an insurrection if the government of India invades the United States. So it has to be non-state actors. If it's state actors, it would be a coup or a war. So non-state actors collectively coming together to use violence with an attempt to overthrow the government. Insurrection. Was January 6th that? No. It was a riot that got out of control. They weren't attempting to overthrow the government, as is self-evident, as even Destiny admitted, because if they were trying that, they breached police and made it into the Capitol, and they basically just milled around. If they were really trying to overthrow the government, they would have done much more. It was a riot that got out of control. That's my definition. Pisco gives this broad definition that's basically like, you know, any violence or intimidation used to impede a government process. Okay, but the problem with that definition is that means that many, many Black Lives Matter rallies meet that definition. Attacks on ICE facilities by Democrats meet that definition. The Chaz Zone meets that definition. The attack on the White House premises on May 30th, 2020 meets that definition. So what are we doing about it? If the argument is, well, we keep people off the ballot that have engaged in that insurrection, okay, then anyone that supported Black Lives Matter, like Kamala Harris putting a bail fund afterwards, she should also be kept off the ballot, right? Because that's all I'm interested in. I'm interested, let's treat this shit equally, right? Not like has been the case for 8 years now of Trump. Well, we'll treat Trump people with one standard and we'll treat everyone else another one. So if Trump has classified documents, throw the book at him, raid Mar-a-Lago. If Hillary has classified documents and her team destroys subpoenaed evidence, we'll give everyone immunity. If Biden has classified documents and his ghostwriter deletes evidence, we'll say, he's a confused old man. We're not going to charge him. Same thing with this insurrection bullshit. Same thing. If you want to use a definition that's so overarchingly broad that it basically encompasses almost every political riot or protest, fine, whatever. I'll concede your definition. Now tell me why you didn't demand Democrats be kept off ballots. Tell me why, if you're Destiny, you didn't say Democrats have it coming if they're shot. Why? Thank you, Mr. E, with the super chat. Crucible Raid. Thank you. Superjet Todd Sullivan, thank you so much. Says great work. Blue Skittle Super Chat, $4.99. Subscribe, thank you. Did I miss anyone else? They're coming in fast and furious. Wicked Wally, how you doing, my friend? $5. Funny how protesters storming Parliament over the new tax proposal was shot in Kenya 2 weeks ago. Nobody said an insurrection was thwarted. Yep, exactly. There's a reason they use that term. Zen's Forehead, Super Chat, $4.99. Good performance from Andrew. Didn't allow Destiny particulars and stuck to the broader topic. Agreed. Now, I am going to say where I thought Andrew went wrong. But overall, I think he won pretty convincingly. Did I miss any? Super Chat, $9.99. Ty B. Thanks for the debate help. Anytime, man. Super Chat from Damien, Senorita, Pistols, Gershwin, $2. Andrew and the Crucible Crew say gracias, Rob. No problem, man. Happy to help. Did I miss any other? Thank you. If I missed any other, I really apologize. My chat's normally not that fast. I normally don't have that many people. So we got 2,000 in here. So the debate strategy was very good from Andrew from the outset. And the strategy is this, to basically say, listen, I don't have to take, you're in the affirmative. Destiny's arguing this is an insurrection. Why is this debate occurring? Because Destiny has gone on places, including like Piers Morgan, and said anyone at a Trump rally that gets shot has fucked around and found out because they're supporting an insurrectionist, and that's evil and terrible, so you're playing with fire, that's what you get, basically. Right? That's Destiny's argument. Andrew's making the broader argument than just this semantic debate, which is, you're full of shit. You're using this to demonize your opponent so you could justify the heinous bullshit you want done, which Andrew does a great job of outlining that right in the opening statement. So he says, seeing as how that's what Andrew's interested in the debate, he fully admits, I will concede the debate right now that January 6th was an insurrection, if you also concede that the Democrats have engaged in insurrections using your definition. And Destiny won't do it. He won't do it. He obfuscates. I was on a Twitter Spaces with Destiny a week ago, and I made the same point. There was this incident May 30th going into May 31st, 2020, in D.C. There were a bunch of barricades set outside the White House into Lafayette Park. Lefties were using weapons to break through the barricades on their way to the White House, including throwing lit flares, caustic liquid, bricks, bottles, injuring officers. They burned down a building that was there that had restrooms and where federal employees worked. They burned it down and were advancing to the White House. That's an insurrection, right? I've brought it up to Destiny many, many times and his supporters. Joseph Newton, Super Chat, $9.99. Thank you. Rob is political #1 wizard. Thank you. Now, Destiny knows of that insurrection, and for some reason, he's chosen not to look into it. He's heard me say that for 3 years. I've debated him over and over. I bring it up to him then. He goes, what do you think I would say, Rob? I said, what you'll say is you'll try to find some meaningless distinction to argue why that's not an insurrection. No, I wouldn't. Now look at this debate. What did he do the whole time? Meaningless distinctions to try to say, well, that wasn't federal. It has to be federal. And even though his definition said impeding like law enforcement or impeding and protesting laws, he's like, well, it's not impeding law enforcement. It's if you're there to protest a law and then it gets out of hand. And Andrew does a great job of like hammering home on that. That's not what your definition says. Your definition doesn't say federal. So Andrew does a great job. And then the other thing Andrew does is he plays 3 clips in the opening statement, all of which were fantastic, and I'm glad he played all 3 of them. First clip shows that Destiny, because this is the truth. How we determine what's an insurrection or not, the truth is most of us aren't looking at it through a legal scope. So when you said January 6th was you weren't thinking, well, legally, what would I call that exact thing? You were like, is a riot. And when you first heard someone say it was an insurrection, probably what prompts in your head is like insurrection, like an attempt to overthrow the government. No, it wasn't that. Violent attempt to overthrow the government? Clearly not. They didn't even bring guns. How the fuck do you think you're going to overthrow the government if you didn't bring guns? It's stupid. They basically milled around inside the Capitol. Yeah, there were some clashes with police, but it's clear what happened was there were a bunch of people there, hot, pissed off. Some of them started skirmishing with police. A lot of it looked like police initiated the skirmishing, but whatever. And so they clashed with police. But almost all of them, once they were left into the Capitol or got into the Capitol, they weren't hunting down Congress people and beating them down or anything like that. It's clear it wasn't an insurrection. What happens is people like Destiny, who initially said that, they saw the footage and said, you heard the clip. He said, it's clear if they wanted to actually try to overthrow the government, they would have done more. Then what Destiny realized, like the Democrats, was, it's politically expedient for us to call this an insurrection. So now that's what we're going to call it. So 2021 Destiny said, clearly, if you just look at that, it wasn't an insurrection. None of the facts changed. None of the facts that Destiny originally said was, dude, this wasn't an insurrection. He said anyone objectively looking at this crowd knows they would have done more if it was going to be an insurrection. They didn't. That proves it's not. Nothing he's learned since then has changed that. So him looking up what the technical definition of insurrection is doesn't change that at all. At all. Trump talking about alternate electors doesn't change that at all. It does not. That's the truth. So great on Andrew to play that clip. And I'm glad he brought it up again later in the debate. That was an important point. The other 2 points he brings up goes to the broader conversation of why are we having this conversation. The first clip he plays was from a debate I had with Destiny way back in 2020. 2020, before January 6th. I think it was at the end of May 2020. I call into Destiny's show. It was the first time I ever talked to him. And I wanted to talk about the political violence that we saw coming from the left. I didn't call it an insurrection because I didn't feel it was an insurrection. But it was definitely targeted political violence from the left. If you go back and watch that debate, it is insane the admissions I get. For example, here's an admission I get from Destiny. I said, the conspiracy theorist in me thinks that these Democratic governors and mayors are allowing the riots to occur so that it'll hurt Trump politically. He says, of course! Go back and watch. That's not a conspiracy, of course. That's what he says. That's the party Destiny's voting for. That's he admitting that their leaders allowed riots to occur for political reasons to hurt their opponent. That's what Destiny said. Go back and watch. Now he's going to stand on his high horse 4 years later and say, oh, well, Trump supporters are treasonous and they deserve to be shot. That's his point. Then the point that is played, that is Destiny, right? When I'm talking to him in the spaces from the other day, and it harkens back to, I tell Destiny in that space, I say, remember when you told me that political violence completely legitimate? It's just the other side of the coin to voting? I don't remember saying that. Yes, he did. That's what he said in May of 2020. That's what he said. Or maybe it was June, but it was around May or June of 2020. That's what he said. Rioting is the other side of the coin to voting. Now, he did say he was against rioting against private property. He didn't like that Black Lives Matter was doing that. But he has no problem with them rioting against public institutions. That would mean that Black Lives Matter was worse than January 6th, because January 6th only was against a public institution. Didn't burn down people's private property, did it? In other words, Destiny's saying he's for political violence. Violence targeted at political institutions. That's what Destiny said. That's a fucking insurrection based on his definition. So in May of 2020, Destiny's saying, I totally support insurrections. I think they're totally legitimate. That was his argument. Now, what's changed? In effect, what Destiny's argument is, I think if you get shot, you had it coming. If you support insurrections committed by people I don't like. But if you like insurrections committed by people I do like, well, then that's a perfectly legitimate form of protest. See how that works? You see what he's doing? That's the point. The point is that he's setting up a scenario where he's acting like I can say the most vitriolic shit, even after an assassination attempt, and say that this innocent firefighter that died had it coming because he supported an insurrection, when Destiny 4 fucking years ago gave me the rationale for why he thinks insurrections can be a legitimate form of protest. One set of rules for him and his side, a different set for the other people. That's clip number 2. Clip number 3, and I've said this the whole time. Now, I've defended Destiny. Let me be clear to the audience here. I don't want Destiny banned from X. I don't want him banned from YouTube. I ain't about that. Fuck him. In fact, not only should he not be banned, they should I hope YouTube plasters his fucking videos to the top of YouTube. I hope everyone right before they vote gets to see Destiny, average Democrat Destiny, saying, if you're a Trump supporter, you're fucking around and finding out. If you get shot, so be it. Good. Blare that shit everywhere. Sounds good to me. Remember that when you go to the voting booth, normie. That's who the left is. That's who the Democrats are. So I say go for it, man. Where I draw the line is, are you actually calling for violence? And I'm sorry, making horrible jokes about this firefighter being killed, that's not a call to violence. That's a horrible joke. But hey, whatever. I don't have to like the joke. If I don't like it, I'll tune out. But I'm not saying I would never debate him or anything. I would not debate him if I think he is legitimately calling for my death, or legitimately calling for the death of Donald Trump. Then it's over. I don't know that he's doing that. But what I do know is this. That third clip, which I was happy that Andrew used, where Pisco calls in. Here's the other thing. When he tells Piers Morgan, when Piers says, will you condemn this assassination attempt? Destiny says, I won't condemn it for you people. What he's saying there is, I don't respect you people. I owe you nothing. But that's not true of his friend Pisco. And so when his Pisco asked him point blank, do you wish that bullet would have killed Trump? And Destiny's answer was, I don't know what I could say. I'm not trying to Fed post. Well, what I will say is the worst thing that could have happened was him to be shot at and not die. And Pisco, to his credit, me and Pisco have gone back and forth many times. To his credit, it's like, no. Him getting killed would have been the worst. And Destiny's like, well, yeah, basically because it would have helped him politically, helped their side politically. Now, mileage may vary, whether you think that's him just being an edgelord who's throwing a little temper tantrum because the guy that he lied to you about, Joe Biden, that him and all the Democrats lied to you for 4 years about not having cognitive decline. It was made evident to us all, and it looked like Biden was going to lose the election, and it looked like that they were losing a bunch of court cases, so Destiny decided to throw a little fucking temper tantrum, and so he didn't really mean it. Maybe. That's how I look at it. Or maybe you think he did mean it. But the point is, Andrew's correct to point that out is the moment. How could you fucking stand on your high horse about democracy and all this other shit when you made that claim? Not to some randoms you didn't like, to your audience and to your friend. You were asked point blank, did you want that bullet to kill Trump? And you basically intuited, yeah. That's what he did. Now, the one thing I will say, one of the things I'll say to criticize Andrew a little, he should have used those opening statement clips much more throughout the debate. Much more. I think it was an effective opening statement to set the broad discourse for why we're having this debate. So every time Andrew's making the point, dude, you've broadened the definition of insurrection so broad that it includes like a bunch of Democrats and shit like that, including people like Kamala Harris. You're supporting her. And the entire reason we're having this debate is because you implied insurrectionists deserve to be shot. Okay? That's you. That's Democrats. You've defended the insurrections and violence is legitimate. Other side of the coin to voting. You seem to intuit that Trump deserved to be shot. Now what? And I think that Andrew sort of got lost in the minutia of the definition that Destiny was giving and lost a little of that broad picture. Now, when you're in the middle of a debate, it's easy for someone like me to Monday morning quarterback and say, oh, I'm analyzing. But I will say I was saying that in real time as I was watching the debate. Some other points. Andrew's correct. He doesn't have to give a definition. The way this works is Destiny is the affirmative. He is affirming that this was an insurrection. I don't have to give an insurrection definition. It wouldn't have hurt. If I was Andrew, my definition of insurrection would have just been a group of people coming together with a violent attempt to try to overthrow the government. Yeah, January 6th wasn't that. I also don't think Black Lives Matter was that. They were protesting things about the government. They were clashing with government. Their intent wasn't like to steal the seat of power of government. Wasn't it? They would have brought weapons and shit if that was the plan, January 6th. That's what I'd have said. But fine, we'll accept your definition, which is overly broad. So he could have used that definition, but he didn't have to. He's absolutely right. And it's funny because at the end, during the call-ins, like Destiny's like, what if I said, Andrew, do you think January 6th was blah, 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 and like mumbles? And yeah, that's making Andrew's point for him. If that was the topic, Andrew would have said, well, I don't have a definition of why don't you tell me what it is, and then I'll say if I think it is or isn't, if January 6th was or wasn't. And if you said means anybody who shouts anything politically, Andrew would say, okay, then yes, I guess January 6th was people shouting shit politically, but so was like every other political rally, so what's the point? And of course, the call-ins and Destiny's audience didn't get that. Now, you could say, well, yeah, but would it have behooved Andrew to have a definition? Sure, it could have. But maybe that just broadens the debate to an area that Andrew doesn't feel necessary, which is fine. Crucible, thank you so much. Incredibly generous for $100 from all of us here at the Crucible, my friend. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Really do. That's incredibly generous. Always a fan of the Crucible. Happy to be part of their community. Love watching Andrew, Rachel, Zen, the rest of the crowd debate. They've helped me more than people know. Not just with money, but connections. I can't tell you how many times I've like talked to Andrew on the phone and just been like, dude, I'm fucking fed up. Like with plugging away, like all kinds of stupid shit. There's so many people that stab you in the back or they'll smile at your face and then trash talk you behind the scenes and blackball you and all this shit. I always say this, Andrew's almost the exact opposite of everyone you see online. Most people, these streamers and shit, put on this really friendly face and then they're pricks behind the scene. Andrew comes across as a prick to a lot of people, but he's actually like the nicest guy in the world, which is funny that he's sort of doing it the opposite. And everybody, even people that dislike Andrew debating and they dislike his positions, everyone, even on the left that's talked to him behind the scenes or had interactions with him as a moderator or whatever, all of them will tell you, yeah, it's very cool. Even, you know, when even the people that hate your politics and hate your culture can be like, well, I can still interact with him because he's fair, he's cool. Thank you, Rogue. I appreciate it. So, thank you, John. I appreciate it, man. So, continuing with and analyzing the debate. So, that's Destiny's definition he reads is sort of, I couldn't believe it. Because, and here's something that's funny. For all I've heard Destiny, now keep in mind, I happen to know because I've watched some Destiny content in the past couple weeks because I was trying to get on Lex Friedman to debate against Destiny. I know I'm going to debate Destiny on this very topic in the near future, so I was kind of watching to see what he would say. I haven't heard him define insurrection. Now, how could it be that you're going on all these shows like Piers Morgan or, X Spaces, you're going on all these shows saying that Trump's this evil monster and his supporters deserve to get shot because they support an insurrection, but he never defines it. Ever. So I was interested. How's he going to define it? So he goes from some paper that this guy wrote. And it's weird because a definition you would think is like, here's the word and here's how I define it. Instead, he gives a definition which, okay, in the loose sense of the term, I'll say I accept that it's a definition. He says, here are the criteria that need to be met for an insurrection. Okay? And it's like, I can't even remember what the 4 were. But it basically becomes irrelevant because the first 3 is literally every protest. Like, not even riot, protest. Has to be public, okay. Has to basically be, bitching about something, a law, okay. Have to have some act of violence, okay. A regular protest, or intimidation. Now, that's arguable. And then the 4th is it has to be public. Well, that's every protest. Crucible Limited, thank you again. Super chat for $20. The true purpose of the debate is to get this definition out of them so others can completely destroy it. Rob, the torch is yours. Salute. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, his definition is going to fuck him right over. And I think you did fine with it. I absolutely did. You absolutely correctly pointed out that, okay, it was a bunch of people with a purpose. That's every protest. It was violence. That's every riot. And intimidation. That's interesting. And I wish that Andrew would have spent more time on this at the end, but Andrew says, okay, what about the phrase, no justice, no peace? What's that mean? What's that mean, no justice, no peace? Well, it means if you know justice, then you know peace. But it also means if I have no justice, then you have no peace. Really? Well, that sounds like intimidation to me. That would mean that every protest, civil rights protest that chanted no justice, no peace, was using intimidation. Destiny says you don't need weapons if you have a crowd that's large enough, even if they're unarmed. Oh, you mean like the Million Man March? Yeah, from the river to the sea could be one. So even that, once you say, well, it doesn't have to be violence, it could be intimidation. I mean, if you have a bunch of people screaming, close this police station down, 5,000 people standing outside it, is that intimidation? I think you could make the case. So that would mean not just every riot, every protest would meet this definition. Public, yeah. Public, as in you didn't break into someone's house and do this, you're doing it out in the open. Yep, that's every protest. So what are they quibbling about? Well, the second definition, or part 2 of his definition, which I can't remember the exact wording of it, but was basically protesting or resisting a law or interfering with the government agents in action thereof. And I think that Andrew absolutely does right to say that or does a lot of work. Or is a very important word when it comes to definitions. Because or means you can ignore everything that was just said. If it's 1, 2, or 3, all you got to do is say, okay, I have a problem with number 3. So the or sort of preventing government agents from instituting the law. Thank you, Old School, for the super chat. $4.99 says, Destiny and the rest of the Dems are finally revealing their totalitarian instincts. Blue fascism's arrived. Totally agree. So how is it not? a regular riot when the police say, curfew's been called. This is no longer a lawful protest. Leave the street. Aren't you at that point when you refuse interfering with a government agent? Here's another question I have. Would it be an insurrection if someone said, I don't like Joe Biden, I'm going to physically remove him from office? Is that an insurrection? If a group of people decide to do that, break into the White House, like that scene in Old School where they throw the bag over his head and he's like, if you tell anyone, we'll effing kill you. I'm just kidding. We'll have him back by 6. What if someone does that? They just kidnap Biden. So he's no longer president. Is that an insurrection? I would say so. It's an attempt to overthrow the government. I would say, yeah, that's an insurrection. Is it, according to Destiny's definition? Is that true? Occur? I don't know. Super chat from Ken, $20. Thank you. Verbal Kundu Destiny Rob. Be verbal water, my friend. Thank you so much. Now, the one thing that I think Andrew, and here's the deal, like Andrew and me debate differently and we focus on different things. I focus on a lot of these issues particularly, so I know more examples of it. Andrew admits out of the top, he hasn't heavily researched this, which makes it all the more shameful that Destiny lost the debate. This is Destiny's area of expertise that he spent dozens of hours focused on. This was the best he could do. This was Andrew, whose literally entire family's been fucking carabining around the world, doing show after show on topics not even related to this, jumping in to take this debate. Thank you, Kara. Super chat for $10. Smiley face, thank you. Which makes it all the more worse. But, continuing. One of the things that Andrew could have said, there's many, many examples of federal. If he wants to distinct it, it has to be federal. There's many examples. For example, Roe v. Wade protest. One of the callers brings that up. He says, well, was that a federal law? Yes, because the Supreme Court is federal. So protest against the overturning of Roe v. Wade, which the expressed intent of those protests. Remember what happened? The Dobbs decision got leaked, which then caused people like Chuck Schumer to say, Brett Kavanaugh, you've reaped the whirlwind. Remember that? Then a bunch of people illegally protested outside Kavanaugh's house with intimidation, posting up pictures of his kid's school and shit, which is intimidation. Then there was an assassination attempt. That's right, an assassination attempt on Brett Kavanaugh. How's that not a fucking insurrection? Federal. And Andrew's like, no, the abortion laws are state. Bullshit. That's an insurrection. Completely supported by the Democrats. Where was Destiny? How about attacks on ICE facilities? How many times have we seen them? Remember that? AOC says ICE facilities are concentration camps. Remember that one guy got shot and killed because they were attacking an ICE facility? Remember when they attacked the ICE facilities and pulled down the American flag and stomped on it and lit it on fire? I remember that shit. Insurrection. How many La Raza groups were there protesting U.S. immigration policy that would block streets and use intimidation? Insurrection, every one of them. Where are the Democrats? The Chaz Zone, which is brought up. He says it's against state. Bullshit. Andrew finally nails him on at the end. So you're telling me that if I quarantine off a portion of the state of Pennsylvania where I live and say this is no longer U.S. government property, it's mine, that's not an insurrection against the federal government? Bullshit. Furthermore, Destiny tries to equivocate to the term treason. Can you commit treason against a state government? Interesting that you would bring up that example. So let's say that Benedict Arnold helps the British overthrow the government of Pennsylvania. Is that an insurrection against the United States government? Yes! Yes, it is, because Pennsylvania is one of the states that belongs to the federal union. So it would still be treason against the government of the United States to help Great Britain take out the militia of Pennsylvania or the governor of Pennsylvania. That's still treason against the United States. Why would insurrection be any different? Beta, thanks for the super chat. 1.1k people watching live. Keep it up, Rob. Thank you. I appreciate it. Really do. Those are all examples. How about the fucking riot yesterday in D.C. where pro-Palestinian protesters? Remember, we had a bunch of Democrats that said, I'm not going to meet with Netanyahu. I'm not going to meet with him. And how dare they say anyone who's, doesn't want to fund this war is supporting Hamas. Then what happened? Later that day, well, a bunch of Hamas supporters went to the Freedom Bell, vandalized it, attacked U.S. Federal National Guard troops or Forest Patrol, whatever the hell, Park Patrol, whatever they were. Insurrection? Democrat voters? By the way, I agree. I have no fucking love for sending Israel money or anything like that as well. That's why I don't call shit like that insurrections. I say these are a bunch of assholes engaged in a riot. They should be arrested. Okay? I don't say, and Democrats that support them should be kept off of ballots. Notice I don't say that. I didn't say that during Black Lives Matter when I was criticizing the riots of Black Lives Matter. I didn't call it an insurrection once. I said they were acting as domestic terrorists, but I didn't say it was an insurrection. Now, where is Destiny for all those? Can anyone show me one time where he said Democrats that supported any of those things that I just talked about should be kept off ballots? Did he ever say it? Did he say that, now if you attend a Democrat rally and you get shot, you fucked around and found out? Has Destiny said that? It was amazing. And I understand that Destiny's going to, and I have to be clear here. I'm not trying to hide anything. I kind of like Destiny. I really like debating him. I think he's a prick. But I think his energy matches my energy most of the time. And I think he's a good foil to me because when I debate him, I kick his ass and I get tens of thousands of people watching me kick his ass. Great. Love it. Fantastic. I don't want his channel banned. I have a bias to not want to think the worst of him. I'm not saying we're buddies. I'm not saying we're handed out at the bar, but that's my bias. So I've defended Destiny, and I stand behind my defense. I didn't want to see him banned off YouTube, didn't want to see him banned off X, and I said, I'm not sure that he's calling for actual violence against Trump or his supporters. That's the stance I took then, that's the stance I'm continuing to take now. But I also said that his comments were so inflammatory, particularly when directly asked by Pisco if he wanted Trump to be killed, that I don't blame people for coming to the conclusion that, yes, that's what he's saying. That's my honest bias. Just being honest with it. But it's clear that he has a blatant double standard in how he's approaching this shit. It's clear that he threw a fucking... This is what happened with Destiny. This is what happened. I don't give a shit. I'll tell him right to his face. This is what happened. Destiny's an institutionalist amongst anything else. Yes, he's a Democrat. The Democrats happen to be the party of the institutions at this point. They're all in lockstep with them. So he's always going to defend the institutions. I've debated Destiny over and over and over for years on FBI corruption going against Trump. Double standards in their investigations against Trump versus people like Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. That's sort of my whole shtick, talking about the corruption of these institutions and how they engage in double standards and how we need to end that corruption. That's basically what the majority of my channel's about. So anytime I've debated Destiny, it's been sort of on those things. Destiny's never once said, you're right, this was corrupt. He's never once said, oh my God, you're right, that's a left-wing insurrection. Never once. Never said any of this shit. Ever. Not once. Then he engaged. What happened was because these institutions are on his side, and it's always wins. You're some dude like me. How many times am I winning politically? Well, I supported Ron Paul. Yeah, he got screwed over by his own party. Donald Trump was the first presidential candidate I ever voted for that won. Then he loses in 2020. Republicans lose in 2022. My issues culturally are almost never pushed to the forefront. Even if Trump wins, he ain't going to do the shit I want to see done, like disband the FBI. Not going to happen. Won't happen. So I'm used to losing with a little grace. I don't have to throw tantrums like a little baby when my political side loses, when a court case doesn't go my way. You know how many hours I've spent researching like corruption of the Biden family in Burisma, or the FBI's corruption in the Mueller report and their Russiagate investigation? What were the consequences of that? Nothing. One person, Kevin Kleinsmith, got a slap on the wrist. That was it. Dude's already back to practicing law. That's it. Loss after loss after loss. No one ever held to account. You ever see me calling for people to get shot? You ever see me making allusions to wanting assassination attempts? No. I come on here, I rant and rave a little bit. Left-wingers come on and go, ha ha, you lost. I say, you're right. What can I do better? That's it. I'll make jokes. I'll raise my voice. But I ain't a toddler throwing a tantrum. That's what Destiny was. Because the 1 3-week period in his life where he got a bunch of losses, Chevron gets overruled. Fisher gets overruled. The immunity case comes up of Trump. Doesn't go the way that Destiny likes. Then Biden goes on the debate stage. Remember that? Remember Biden's video? One of the best videos in the history of X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. So Donald Trump says he wants to debate me. After I beat him in 2 debates last year. You know what I say to that? Make my day, pal. You free on Wednesdays? Remember that video? Well, he made your day, didn't he, Biden? The worst fucking debate beatdown in the history of presidential politics. You had to drop out of the race, you fucking loser. Because you got crushed so bad. Ooh, Destiny didn't take that well, did he? Ooh, no. Then there's basically a civil war because he's still going to defend Biden, wants Biden to stay in. So all of a sudden, all the press, in an attempt to save their ass, because really they don't give a shit about the truth. They just want to cover up for the fact that they've covered for Joe Biden for 4 years. So now all of a sudden they're like, oh, this dude's got cognitive decline. They're not announcing it because all of a sudden they're actually interested in telling the truth. They're announcing it because they're like, well, shit, we need to beat Trump. We're not real journalists. We're just propagandists. And we think Biden's an impediment to us beating Trump, so we're going to force him out. So it was a bad week for Destiny and the Democrats. A bad couple of weeks. And so how did he handle it? Like a fucking child. That's how he handled it. The last thing that happens is the assassination attempt on Trump. And oh boy, can you imagine Destiny's blood pressure when Trump defiantly stands up and shakes his fist and says, fight, fight, fight. Can you imagine the tantrum that Destiny and people like him threw? Ooh. Now Destiny, and look, one thing I don't do, I don't spend a lot of time talking about people's personal lives, but I'll just say this without delving into it. Maybe I know Destiny's publicly said he's going through a divorce. I don't give a shit what you think of his relationship. That shit's probably stressful. And maybe there's other things going on in his life. I don't know. You add all that together, you're having a bad day, you're taking some political losses, and you act out. And you start being an edgelord. Oh, this guy had it coming. And someone says, oh, you can't say that. So what's he going to do? He's going to double down. If my parents were there, I would say they deserve it. And he just keeps spiraling and doubling down and doubling down and doubling down. Then he goes on Piers Morgan because he's acting like a child. He doesn't know how to regulate his emotions. He doesn't know how to act with a little grace when he got some temporary losses. Temporary losses is all it was. And it was enough to make him freak out. Imagine if he was like us. Imagine if he was like someone advocating for Christian policies. Shit, we never see that, do we? Imagine the meltdowns that he would be having on a daily basis. Thanks, Cut. I appreciate it. Super Chat, Pinkerton, $5.99. Do I think Vivek Ramaswamy would disband the FBI? I don't know. At least he was suggesting it. That's what needs to happen. He probably wouldn't, but I wish he would. All of these, imagine everything, all the institutions, the media's on your side, and the FBI, every executive agency, FBI, State Department, CIA, NSA, they're all on your side, and corporate America, and the algorithms of all the places like YouTube and Google and shit, they're on your side, right? And academia's on your side, and all of the entertainers, Hollywood and shit, they're on your side, and you throw a fucking tantrum when you get one temporary loss. That's what was going on. That's what Destiny was doing. Super chat from Damien again. $2. Rob, I deem this the start of my God Emperor arc. Thank you. That's what was going on. That was the tough guy that was screaming at people on Twitter Spaces till I came on. When I came on there, go ahead and go back and watch that Twitter Spaces he did. Go ahead, go watch it. Blah, 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 blah. He's talking to a bunch of people that don't know how to debate and don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Robnoerr on the line. Watch his demeanor change like that. Because he knows. That shit ain't gonna work with someone like me. It ain't gonna work with someone like Andrew. You could raise your voice and talk rapidly. I could raise my voice and talk faster than you. I don't give a shit. It's not impressive to me. I know what I'm talking about. Where can you watch it? Destiny has it up on his channel. Or at least he did. Let's see if I can find it. I'll put it in the chat. I can't do Twitter Spaces without using my phone. So he did have it up. Let's see. I'll warn you,
you're aware of
other
that, right?
Conservatives on here do very poorly, but here's the link. Thanks, Gerald. I appreciate it. There you go. So, Destiny, where was that tough guy? Where was the guy? All of a sudden, he's like, I think that January 6th was an insurrection. I think there's 4 criteria for an insurrection, and it's 1, 2, 3. No, man, where's that guy that was just bragging about people getting shot? Where'd he go? That was the whole point, right? That was Destiny's big arc. I'm not fucking around with these conservatives anymore. I'm going to tell them how it is. I'm going to go on Piers Morgan. And his audience, yeah. Okay, now's your chance. There's Andrew, big boy. That was the whole debate. That's what we were talking about, January 6th being an insurrection. Right? I didn't see. Now, towards the end, towards callers, he got a little more animated. No, I don't mind. I'll admit, sometimes I debate calm. Sometimes I try to reciprocate energy. But where was it? And now the narrative's going to change to, well, he was just joking around. And maybe he was. Thanks, Joshua. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think Destiny respects me, and I do respect. Now, I know I'm talking a lot of shit on Destiny, and I mean everything I'm saying. Don't get me wrong. I do. But I still like debating him. I still like interacting. He hasn't done anything to me personally that's begrudging. I'm just calling balls and strikes. I fucking debated Andrew. I'll go hard at Andrew, too. That's just the way it is. Now, Andrew I consider a friend. I don't consider Destiny a friend, per se. But he hasn't done anything to me personally egregious. Is he calling for my death, though? If I go to a Trump rally and get shot, did I deserve it? Now, a couple more things to talk about. One area of Andrew's strategy I didn't really care for was when he was saying, I think he makes a great point. Like someone said in the chat there, I just saw it said, I only care about the legal definition. It's a great point. If that's what we're looking at, then we would say, okay, if this was legally an insurrection, why was no one charged with it? Now, think of what Destiny's answer to this is. This is laughable. And I wish Andrew would have called this out a little more. He says, well, there's a lot of reasons that they would have chose not to charge him. Like, could they prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? Think about that for a minute. Why are we having this debate again? Well, let's go back and look at that Piers Morgan interview. Because Destiny was being a big man and said, you fuck around, find out if you went to an insurrection. So here's Destiny's threshold. It was so obviously an insurrection, so obvious, no doubt that it was an insurrection, that anyone that even attends a Trump rally has it coming if they get shot. That's how obvious of an insurrection it was. But at the same time, there wasn't enough evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. Let me repeat that. You, as someone who wasn't even there January 6th probably, if you go to a Trump rally and you get shot, well, you were fucking around and finding out because it's so obvious that January 6th was an insurrection that you're now supporting it. But if you actually were there January 6th, well, we can't prove that it was an insurrection beyond a reasonable doubt. Thank you, Drunk Batman. Super chat for $10. Originally discovered you through Drone Tech and found the Crucible about a year ago. Good to see two great minds coming together. Drone Tech, fantastic. Everybody who's watching, check out Drone Tech Politics. I think he is one of the absolute best people. Even he'll admit, he doesn't do live streams that very much. That's not his forte, but he does like daily videos where he points out like sort of the hypocrisy of the media, and it's fantastic. Drone Tech Politics, check him out. So yeah, that argument from Destiny where it's like, well, beyond a reasonable doubt. Here's the way I put it to Andrew when I was talking to him. I'm like, okay, so Destiny always likes to talk about conspiracy theories. Now, the January 6th investigation is the largest FBI investigation in history. It is clearly ran by prosecutors, agents, and judges that absolutely are leaving no stone unturned to go after every person connected to January 6th, except whoever put the pipe bomb and whoever built the gallows. For some reason, they can't find that, but everyone else they're going after. Wonder why. Anyways, so they'll move heaven and earth to take blue-haired grandmas and throw the book at them. Charge them with as much as possible. They're doing it over and over and over again. And Destiny's conspiracy is as follows. Despite that, for some reason, they're not charging them with the obvious insurrection. We all see that it's obvious, but they're not going to charge them with that. Does that mean that the FBI is secretly in bed with Trump and Trump supporters? Is that his argument? If it's so obvious, if Destiny could see it and it's like, it's so obvious people deserve to get shot if they're at rallies, Can the FBI call Destiny so he could tell them, oh, clearly this is insurrection? Can they? Because somehow they missed that. Isn't that strange? Speaking of conspiracy theories, right, Destiny? Some massive conspiracy. They're not going to charge him with the most significant crimes. We'll get him for trespassing and delaying an official proceeding, which, by the way, was rebuked by the Supreme Court. Then he says, well, maybe it would have went to the court and then the court would have had to rule. Why would the FBI be concerned about that? So is Destiny's argument the FBI is not charging people with insurrection because they know that it'll go to the Supreme Court and force the Supreme Court to rule on it? Then why did they charge them with delaying official proceedings, which went to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court had to rule on? None of it makes sense. And I think Andrew's correct to bring that argument up. However, where it goes awry for Andrew is, Destiny's response is predictable. Just because they weren't charged doesn't mean that they didn't commit insurrection. And Andrew's response of, but just because they weren't charged doesn't mean they did commit insurrection, is a non sequitur. Of course, no one would disagree with that. I haven't been charged with murder. That doesn't mean I'm a murderer. Right, no one's saying that. So I just think that there was a I don't think it's a big deal, but I thought it was confusing on Andrew's part, and his time could have been better spent arguing like, so what's, this is a massive conspiracy? Is that what you're saying? But Andrew finally gets to the end of the debate. He nails it. He nails the point better than I would have when he talks about the dope smoking hippies. Leave it to Andrew to go to dope smoking hippies. Again, as I said at the overview, the problem is Destiny's saying treat these people like shit, Trump supporters. They're terrible. They're horrible. And then you're like, well, why? Because they committed insurrection. Well, define insurrection. And he basically defines it in a manner that is so encompassing that dope-smoking hippies are committing insurrection. That's right. If a bunch of hippies get together, let's say 20 of them, to protest, even better, let's say 5,000 of them, to protest federal laws against marijuana, and a handful of them engage in an act of violence, they start fighting with police, that's an insurrection. Presumably that would mean Destiny would say they would all deserve to be shot. And anyone that supported that group would not be allowed to be on a ballot. That's the end of the fucking debate. That's it. I can't think of a more clear-cut example of broadening the definition of insurrection to mean nothing. That's it. That is the debate. That's the entire point. When Andrew sets this up in the beginning and says, if you're going to say that the definition of insurrection is so encompassing that Democrats also meet it all the time, fine, I'll concede that January 6th was an insurrection as well. Now we're both dirty insurrectionist supporters. Now what? You don't have a moral high ground then. Right? Now, I do wish that Andrew would have went back to his opening more. He does go back and say, remember, 2021, Destiny said this wasn't an insurrection. It was just a riot that got out of control. Because if they wanted to do more, they would have. Clearly, they didn't. That's a good point. But he should have also brought up those points. And remember that second clip where Destiny said political violence against institutions totally justified. That's basically him saying insurrections are just the other side of the coin to voting. That's what he said. So when he's on his moral high horse judging people for supporting insurrections, remember, that's what he did back in 2020. That's what he was doing. Yeah, Blazendo, I think you might be the only one who thinks Destiny won. And then the third thing is, Destiny basically couldn't, when talking to his friend, seem to intuit that he wanted Trump to get shot. And that paints a picture that Andrew's talking about in his closing. Destiny's making this argument because he wants to demonize his opponents to justify all sorts of heinous shit to them. That's what's going on here. It's exactly what's going on. There's all sorts of other things that could have gone in. Like, Destiny makes this argument over and over, which, granted, it didn't need to get brought up. And I think one of the things Andrew does better than me is he keeps a debate narrowly focused. One of the things I do is, sometimes if someone wants to talk about 15 things, I'll talk about 15 things. And Andrew even told me when I talked to him before the debate, keep it narrowly focused. He's absolutely right. So it's fine that this didn't get brought up, right? But the idea of Trump telling them to go there, and this was brought up a little. Trump told them to go peacefully and patriotically have their voices heard. Destiny seems to imply he didn't say that in the speech. That's bullshit. That's what he said in the speech. He also later tweeted out to be peaceful. Why would he do that if he wanted a violent insurrection? Why? What was the evidence that the Colorado court used to say that Trump engaged in an insurrection? Want to know what the evidence was? One, they made some allusions about he didn't call the National Guard quick enough on January 6th. That doesn't prove he engaged in an insurrection at all. Let's say the worst was, let's say Trump thought it was terrible and thought it was an insurrection and purposely didn't call it off. That doesn't mean he incited it, or that doesn't mean he engaged in the creation of it at all. Engaging is something is different than not preventing it. That's different. And actually, the Colorado court's very specific on that. It's not enough to stand by and do nothing. You have to be an active participant. Now, I don't concede to that argument anyways, that Trump, because he didn't call the National Guard. But I'm just saying, even if he did concede it. So what was the evidence that he engaged in an insurrection? Well, let me tell you what it was. He said, fight like hell. He retweeted a tweet before January 6th from a woman saying, the cavalry is coming. Those are the sorts of things they used as evidence. He told his people to go to the Capitol. So, if I tell a bunch of people to go to the local gas station and they do, and then they riot, I didn't incite them to riot. I didn't engage in a riot. How's it Trump's fault? He had every right to say, go be peaceful, go protest. It's not him committing an insurrection or engaging in an insurrection. Then the court even says they brought in an expert witness to say, well, when Trump said to be peaceful, what he really was doing was dog whistling to his audience to be violent. Yes, that's right, folks. Even Trump saying be peaceful was evidence to the Colorado court that Trump was telling people to be violent. That's the great evidence that they were able to. That's it. Fight like hell. That's evidence of insurrection. He even, one of the tweets they said mentions Mitch McConnell. He says, we need people to fight like hell. Mitch isn't a fighter. We need people that'll fight more. So what's that mean? He's telling Mitch McConnell to strap on brass knucks and go into the Senate throwing haymakers? Is that what we're to believe? That's what Trump was saying when he said Mitch needs to fight? Or could it be, like every politician that's ever said that, what he means is we need to fight politically? Ranger Rogue, thank you for the raid. 13 viewers, I really appreciate it. That's the evidence they use. And to Destiny, that's good enough. Good enough. Now, do I think optically that Destiny's supporters are predisposed to thinking Destiny won the debate because Andrew didn't give a definition of the term insurrection? Yeah, that's what they'll hang their hat on. And I could see a gripe. I can. But I understand why Andrew didn't give that definition, and I don't think it was necessary. I think objectively looking at it, Andrew's taking the tack of, why do I even have to give a definition? Again, it wouldn't have hurt Andrew to give a definition. A serious attempt by a group of people to try to violently overthrow the government and take it over. Yeah, that's clearly not what January 6th was. My definition's better than yours because your definition basically includes a bunch of shit that's clearly not insurrections, like dope-smoking hippies. So, I mean, that was it. That was the debate. Didn't like the debate. If A equals B and C and D and also it doesn't equal B isn't an argument. If A doesn't equal B and if you can't explain why it doesn't B, then you lose the debate whether or not A equals B. Okay. That's a little confusing, but I think January 6th wasn't an insurrection. It's only a riot. I can explain it according to my definition. So, yeah, I was... Again, I was very interested in Destiny pulling this definition out. Last of Yo, super chat, $10, thank you. Says, good stuff, gonna have to subscribe for this. I found that prescribing to only one side of legal theories dooms your frustration. Colloquial use of words a legal argument does not make. I agree. And, I'll debate people that are left-wing lawyers, and I'll admit that I'm not a lawyer, and oftentimes there are things in the legal process or terminology that I might not have a full understanding of. But I do have an ability to understand that there's two sides to an argument, and oftentimes one side's being intentionally hyperbolic. So, for example, if you look at some of these court cases against Trump, right? Trump's classified documents case. So I might not be a lawyer and can't directly outline exactly what every law is, though I do my best to parse through it. What I do know is this, If Trump committed a crime, so did Hillary's team. They also mishandled classified documents. If Trump committed obstruction of justice because allegedly he told his guy to move boxes, which, oh, by the way, the FBI eventually got those boxes, then Hillary's team clearly obstructed justice when they literally deleted subpoenaed emails. Literally deleted subpoenaed emails that weren't recovered. Deleted subpoenaed emails. That's a clear case of obstruction of justice. Were any of them charged? No, they were given immunity and not charged. I know Biden mishandled classified documents and was left off the hook because he's an old man with memory issues. That's the problem. The double standard for me is the problem. Let me give you an example. If you're new to watching me, Russiagate. One of the conversations with Russiagate was when Don Jr. met with this Russian lawyer named Veselnitskaya in Trump Tower. This was a big deal in like 2016, 2007, or 2017, I guess, when this came out. Oh my God, this is treasonous behavior. He met with a Russian lawyer trying to get dirt on Hillary. I said, why is that a crime? Why is that even suspicion of a crime? What if he would have got dirt on Hillary that would have been evidence of a crime and immediately walked over to the police station and said, my God, I just got this evidence that Hillary Clinton committed a crime. He's not allowed to do that? Now, I could see saying it would be a crime if he said, oh, when we're elected, we'll give you certain shit if you give us dirt. That's different. But no one alleged that. He just listened to what this woman said. Why shouldn't he be allowed to do that? Because she's Russian? If she was English, would it make it any better? If the BBC called Hillary's team and said, we got dirt on Donald Trump, is that also a crime worthy of investigation? My argument was no. Even if you would think it's unethical, I don't think we should consider it a crime to say that we need to investigate people that get dirt on their opponents from foreigners. I don't think that should be a crime. Now, what we know now is Don Jr. didn't get any dirt from Veselnitskaya. In fact, there's a lot of shadiness, but she was actually hired Fusion GPS, which was the law firm that was designed, paid for by Hillary's team to craft the dossier, etc., etc. Bunch of weird coincidences around this Russian lawyer. But forget about all that for now. There was no dirt that was gotten. But Hillary's team got dirt from a Russian by the name of Igor Dushenko, a suspected Russian spy. I don't think that it should be a problem for Hillary's team to talk to Igor Dushenko to get dirt on Trump. Just like I don't think it should be a problem for Trump Jr. to talk to Veselnitskaya to get dirt on Hillary. I say, okay, fair game. But if you disagree with me and you say, actually, it should be a crime, I disagree, but I still find you to be a moral actor that I could discuss things with, as long as you say both of them should be investigated. Both Hillary and Don Jr. Okay, I disagree, but fair enough. At least you're consistent. But that's not what they ever say, is it? That's never what they say. They say, no, just Don Jr., not Hillary's team. I say the same with this insurrection bullshit. Fine. If you want to call January 6th an insurrection because it meets your very broad definition, so be it. But then you have to admit that all of these Democrats also engaged in insurrection. So whatever your punishment is for Trump or for Trump supporters, you should say, and I'm appalled that there wasn't equal punishment for all of these Democrat-led insurrections. But they never say that. Ever. That's the problem. But in tech, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'll just call you Intech. He says, I think Destiny's procession would have better. Basically, it would have been a better definition of insurrection if he explained it better. There are similar distinctions at base. Protest with violence leads a riot that could then lead to the formation of insurrection with proper focus and motivation. Here's the problem, right? For me, an insurrection has to be that there was an attempt to go there to use violence to overthrow the government, and that was your intent all along. It can't be, my intent is I don't like this law. And then you get there and police start pushing you and you push back and all of a sudden you start throwing fists. That's not an insurrection. That's a riot that got out of hand. Even if the reason you were there protesting was you didn't like some law or you didn't like some president or you didn't like the results of an election. Whatever it is, it's still not an insurrection. Unless you sat down with people beforehand and said, here's the plan. We're going to take weapons. We're going to break into the White House. We're going to capture these people. We're going to take over the government. That's an insurrection. That's how I would look at it. The problem with Destiny's definition is there is no progression. That's the problem. How does he delineate a riot from an insurrection? He seems to add things to his definition that aren't there. Well, it has to be federal. It's not in the definition, but okay, let's say that's true. Fine, it has to be federal. Okay, a riot on federal property then. Insurrection? Well, no, because it has to be to protest a specific law. Why? What if it's to protest a specific officer of the law, like Trump? Is that an insurrection? Why wouldn't it be? Seems to clearly meet the definition. So any protest that was on federal property protesting a politician is an insurrection. As long as it uses violence or intimidation. Wouldn't screaming at police be intimidation? How many protests have we seen do that? Pretty much all of them. So there is no progression. That's my opinion. All right, it's midnight. I got to get to bed. Thank you so much. It's very rare for me to have this many people. I usually stream weeknights. I work weird hours, so normally I'm streaming Wednesday, Thursdays, Fridays. Anytime between 6 and 8 p.m. You can find me in my YouTube channels. I'm on X at just robnoerr. But yeah, I love doing these debates. I should be hopefully I'll talk to Andrew about this debate sometime in the near future here, probably on the Crucible. Hopefully I'll line up some more debates on the Crucible. But I do appreciate all the support, I really do. I thought Andrew won convincingly. I thought it was a fun debate. I enjoyed watching it. I would have approached things a little differently than Andrew, but I'm a conceited prick that always thinks that I'm the best debater in the world, so that's perfectly fine. But no, I thought Andrew did great. And I think that all the more impressive is, understand, it is very difficult to debate someone on their area of expertise. Right? So I'm a damn good debater. My friend Aircraft Sparky there was in the military and worked on aircraft. If we have a debate on anything aircraft related, he's blowing me out of the water 100 out of 100 times. That's his area of expertise. Destiny has spent umpteen hours researching January 6th as the most important thing. And he just got fucking crushed by a dude like Andrew who spends the majority of his time, like when he's streaming, talking about Christian issues, cultural issues, going on podcasts all over the country, like whatever, helping his wife prepare for like going on Tim Pool's show, etc. And Andrew still won this debate. Like, just think about that when you're watching. And I understand, I don't think that he won it to the extent that every single person objectively would say, yep, Andrew won. I think if you're trying to be unbiased, the point that Destiny made about, yep, the dope-smoking hippies dooms his position, that's it. It proves Andrew's central thesis. I think he clearly wins the debate there. But I can understand why Destiny supporters would say, well, I think Andrew not having a definition means that Destiny wins. So I don't think it was an immense blowout. But I think definitely objectively Andrew won. That's true. I'd still beat Aircraft Sparky in a debate about aircraft. So thank you all so much. I'm not going to bother to raid anyone on Twitch, seeing as how I have way more people watching on YouTube. You guys are the best. I really appreciate it. Not sure I'll be streaming tomorrow night or not. I was supposed to set up a debate with Pisco, but it looks like that's not going to happen now, unfortunately. But you know, that's okay. Hopefully we'll set it up next week. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll talk to you all soon. As always, have a good one.